Welcome to Central News. I'm Hilary Entwistle. In today's news, Parliament recently passed legislation overhauling New Zealand's alcohol laws for the first time in 20 years. Some of the changes that were made include councils and communities are to have a greater say about off licences in the areas and their opening hours. Waikato MP Lindsay Tish believes these changes will help tackle the problem of New Zealand's binge drinking culture.
The key about this is allowing parents and guardians to actually decide whether their children should be drinking and purchasing alcohol.
Every school in Hamilton City will now have a 40-kilometre safe speed zone on surrounding roads as a result of the council's revised speed bylaw. Other changes included 40-kilometre speed zones in Hamilton's quieter residential streets and reductions in speed for many of the city's rural roads. The Hamilton City Council was congratulated by both the New Zealand Police and the New Zealand Transport Agency for their whole-of-city approach to road safety through slower speeds. Councillor Maria Westphal says the bylaw changes will make it much safer for road pedestrians and all road users and send a strong message that managing speed is vital if we all want to live in a safe city. Motorists will have to spend an extra 9 cents per litre at the pump by 2015, following the government's plan to raise the price of driving. From July the 1st, 2013, the government will increase the excess component of petrol prices and road user charges by 3 cents a litre for the next 3 years, a total of 9 cents by 2015. Transport Minister Jerry Brownlee says the increases are required to deliver the Roads of National Significance program and maintain the value of the Land Transport Fund. Now for our region's weather. Hamilton, your Thursday will be mostly fine with the chance of the odd shower and light winds. Your expected high is 25 and an overnight low of 14. Tauranga, your Thursday will be also mostly fine with a chance of a shower and light winds. Your expected high is 24 and an overnight low of a very humid 17. Stay tuned, as just ahead we look at Waikato's water restrictions. Welcome to Central News on TV Central. It is that wonderful time of year again when we all love to be outside, watering the gardens, washing the car, have the kids running under the sprinkler. However, the Waikato have now been placed under Alert Level 1 for their water consumption. Amy caught up with Tim Harty to find out what this means for you at home.
So Alert Level 1 is a initial water conservation level where we ask residents to restrict their use of sprinklers to the hours of 6 and 8 in the morning and 6 and 8 at night. And that's just before and after peak demand so that we can better manage the supply, and also just gives people a bit of an indication and a reminder of the use of sprinklers, which you can kind of turn on and forget about and leave going all day. And so it's just about, again, getting that message out there to say, hey, look, it's an important thing. Let's remember when and where we can use sprinklers, which are one of the bigger users of water.
Now, how are the alert levels decided on?
So we look at the demand that's happening from the system, and then we make a decision on whether we need to move to an alert level. So we saw increasing demand coming through November, so demand went up from around about 45-50 million litres per day to about 65-70 million litres per day. When we start getting up to that level that early in the summer, we start looking at how we can manage our demand. So our industrial and base load hasn't increased, so we always look to that and say, what's our increase in demand, what's driving that? And it can be quite a subjective decision as you go forward. We look at the weather, we look at what's happening, we look at demand patterns, etc., and then make that decision.
So can you tell us exactly when people can use water around their home?
So this restriction, or Alert Level 1, is basically around sprinklers and the using of sprinklers outside, and that's where we see a lot of demand occurring. So what we don't see is an increase in demand or water coming out of the water treatment plant and an increase in water coming into the wastewater plant. So the alert level is specifically targeting outside use and sprinkler use. And that's because that's one of the bigger sort of non-essential uses of water, and one that can be easily replaced with you standing out there with a hose, and it gets kind of boring after a while watering the garden and you stop, but with a sprinkler it's easy to turn on and forget. So we're just targeting sprinklers, so there are no other restrictions to use of water in the home.
And what parts of the Waikato does this include?
So smart water restrictions and alert levels are restricted to Waikato District, Waipa District and Hamilton City, and we tend to follow each other in terms of alert levels. The communities across those three councils are very tightly linked. You know, a lot of people work in Hamilton that live in those areas, and we all source water from the Waikato River. Some parts of Waipa do go a little bit earlier than us, but the alert levels and the communication is identical, just for ease of informing the public and trying to get people on board and educate them about how important water is.
So what could happen if these restrictions are not put in place?
So demand increases, and I guess like most of the treatment plants in the sub-region can produce a lot of water, but of course producing water costs money. There's chemical, there's power and etc., and you've got to push that out through the plant. So that will increase and continue to increase. Water is also a precious resource. We need to make sure we're using it efficiently and effectively. But there can be situations in 2007 and 8 when we had the significant drought in the region, we were getting to the point where the treatment plant was reaching capacity and we were pushing out 90 million litres per day, which is about 30 million litres more a day than we would on a normal average day. So whilst capacity isn't an issue, it is just about educating people about efficient use of a really precious and natural resource and water, and just making people being aware that it just doesn't pop out of the river into a pipe and turn up at their gate. It's hard, a lot of work and effort and cost goes into treating it and getting it to your residents.
Now, if this continues, what are the tighter restrictions that could be put in place?
So the next level up, level 2, brings in alternate sprinkler days, and that means that it just goes with odd and even numbers and days of and numbers of your house and what days you can use your sprinklers. Same hours apply, 6 and 8 and 6 and 8 at night, just for simplicity's sake, for process sake. Alert level 3 brings in total sprinkler bans and starting to introduce some bans around industrial and commercial. And alert level 4, which is pretty, means we're in pretty serious sort of situation and we have never been to that stage, starts to introduce some pretty significant reductions. Generally we get to alert level 2 if it gets dry. Last year with a very woeful summer that we had in the region, we were fine. This year it's forecast has been a very dry summer, and obviously we want to start getting this information out there because we don't want to move from this level. We want just people to understand and conserve water as we move forward and use it wisely, and that's all this is about. It isn't about trying to get people to stop doing things. It isn't trying to control or dictate to people what they can do. It's just about being respectful of the natural resource, thoughtful about how you use water, and thoughtful about the things that you're doing.
Now, obviously we don't want the tighter restrictions to be put in place, so what are some of the smaller things that people can do around home to conserve their water?
There's a whole raft of things that you can do around your house to conserve water, fixing leaky taps. Using a hose when you're watering your garden and lawn is one of the most significant things you can do. Just because using a sprinkler, you can just forget about it. It uses a lot of water. But fixing leaky taps, full loads of washing in your machine, full loads in your dishwasher, looking outside at doing things like drought-resistant planting, etc. is always good stuff that you can do.
Why do you think we're experiencing higher demand of water this early on in the summer?
It's just a really early onset of some hot and dry weather, and it does come on pretty quickly. We had that warm week or two a couple of weeks back, and we saw a significant increase in water demand by about 15 to 20 million litres per day.
And how can viewers find out more information about the alert levels?
So if you go to any of the councils, Waipa, Waikato or Hamilton City Council websites, you'll find the water alert level information on the front page of those, and that'll take you to everything you need to see and a whole lot of helpful tips and information around water conservation around the home.
Just ahead, Paula Bennett's white paper. Welcome back. In October, the Minister of Social Development launched the White Paper for Vulnerable Children in response to the abuse and neglect of children. I spoke with MP Lindsay Tish to find out some of the details.
The White Paper has brought together the 10,000 submissions that New Zealanders who are concerned about abuse, neglect of children and the consequences that it lead to. 10,000 people made submissions. Interesting, of that 10,000, 2,000 were children. And society as a whole has become very intolerant of the abuse and neglect of children. And so that's the starting point, where we are today with the white paper. And from that now people have got the opportunity to see what it all means, see what people have said, and from there sort of legislation will be drafted.
What are the rates of neglect and child abuse and death?
Well, the deaths, this is, I think New Zealanders would be astounded and very sorry to hear that between 7 and 11 children each year die because of abuse in the home. And this is over the last 2 decades. So it's not a phenomenon that's just happened now. It's over the 2 decades we've seen between 7 and 11 children who have been killed because of abuse and neglect. And if we look at that a child who's in an abusive situation and has been treated as such, long term they have a lot of problems. They just don't integrate back in society, and the cost of looking after these children is around about $750,000 in their lifetime just because of something that happened in the home earlier. So this is a huge challenge for us to get our mind around this, and that's what the white paper's about.
Why was something not done earlier if it's been 2 decades?
Well, it's a good point, is that we know that there's about 150,000 notifications to SIF each year. There's about 20 to 30,000 children who are affected in some way when their families are affected. But what's happened is that they've fallen through the cracks in some cases. And so what the paper looks to do is to have a one-stop shop to be able to bring all the agencies together so that the police can talk to welfare and we have other agencies can talk together, and we then have the opportunity for schools and for sports organisations, for family, for whānau, whatever, to actually coordinate the information so that these children don't slip through the cracks. And that's really the basis of what the white paper's about. How can we better control the issues and the challenges that we have, and that's bringing everybody together.
And so how do the government want to implement their action plan?
Well, we've got a series of things. We've got the white paper, discussions at the moment about that. Then we're going to be looking at a volume 1, which is a program called For Change, a presentation for change. There's a volume 2, and that's going to be the detailed policy research that's come, but probably more important to implement volumes 1 and 2 is going to be the Children's Action Plan, and that's really where the rubber hits the road. This is what are we going to do for these children who are so vulnerable, and that's going to be an evolving process as more information comes in, as research is identified, as we deal with the cases. Then the action plan for children is what it's about, and that, as I said, will evolve as we get more information and we start to make positive changes.
Because they said that New Zealanders were asked what they wanted out of their green paper and stuff, and they said that they wanted a child protection line. So will the government be putting that in place?
Well, part of that is a protection. There's a number of factors. The first is the VICI system, that's the Vulnerable Kids Information System, where all the agencies come together, so it's a one-stop shop in information. There's a Protect line, which is where we're able to identify children at risk so that those who are more vulnerable can be identified at an early age, and some interventions can happen then. So that's the Protect line part of it. And then the other part of it is the risk prevention tool, which incorporates that, but it builds up statistical data. You can identify children who may be at greater risk than others, so that's another part of the process. But collectively, it has to be it's a holistic approach. It's not this is going to solve it, that's going to do it. It's actually all has to be worked together. So over time, these things will evolve.
What do we do once we identify that they're at risk?
Well, this is where the agencies can move in, and as I said, it's going to be a one-stop shop, because at the moment there's a lot of different agencies who have been trying to deal with this, and they've been specialists in particular fields, but the children have fallen through the cracks. And this system is actually to say we can now talk to one another, agencies can talk to one another, they can build up a profile, they can see where the interventions are going to be best held. And if you can stop, it's like the fence at the top of the cliff. If you can do that at an early age, it's far better than trying to pick up the pieces at the bottom, and that's what the white paper is designed to do.
So what's the next step after the white paper?
Well, the next step is that we want to prevent this devastation that happens in homes. We're looking for feedback. There's a number of seminars being held around the country. I've been involved in one in Hamilton where those who are interested in this field have been able to make submissions, and the government then will draw up legislation. Public will be able to have a say again, and we'll have new laws in place. But it's really a community response. The community has to take ownership of this issue about abuse and neglect of children. It can't just be left to the SIFs in this case, who have been the main agency over the years.
Well, thank you very much, Lindsay, and all the best for the government to put that white paper in place.
Thank you.
Coming up next, how the TEL roadworks will affect you this summer. If you have just joined us, welcome to Central News. Recently, I caught up with a project manager for the TEL. In the first part of the interview, we discussed the route and the progress of the major roading project. In part two, we talked more about what will be happening this summer with roadworks and the cost of the project. Now, population growth is actually at a standstill in Tauranga, so do you think it is important that we still have this road?
Yeah, we are developing this road to release development in the future. Obviously, when it was planned, they thought it'd be a lot more further advanced, but it's a road not just for now, it's a road for the future. So.
The project is said to cost $455 million. Are we coming in on budget?
Yeah, we are. On budget, on program, so it's moving along quite quickly.
Do you think that the cost of the road will actually balance out the economic benefit that it's going to bring?
Yeah, the reason for putting it in is not purely an economic driver. It's safety, it's population growth, it's a whole number of things. So yes, it will benefit because it's going to get the freight to the port quicker. So yeah, the reasons for putting it in place are still alive and real.
What problems do you encounter with peat soil?
Okay, well, peat's one of our biggest issues because we're building the Tauranga Link through a swamp. So there's a number of ground improvement methods we've got. One is to put these little wick drains into the ground, and then you preload it with sand and material and consolidate it. So you press out all the water, and then it sinks down. So that's creating a bit of an issue. It's our challenge, and they've got to have 95% of the settlement done before they build the road. So it's part of our contractual requirements.
And how long does compacting take?
Well, 3 months up to a year and a half in some places. In one location, the worst location, we've had 3.5 metres of settlement.
So that means that the ground has actually dropped 3.5 metres?
Yep. We've put material on top of it and it's pressed down 3.5 metres, and then you keep filling it up. But most of the site, you're only getting, there's only 1 to 2 metres of peat. So it's not as bad as the 17 metres in that location.
So what is compaction?
Compaction is consolidating or pressing the material down and pushing all the water out so that it occupies a lesser space. And then you fill up on top of it to bring your level up.
So you stick bores into the side to drain the water out?
You put it's like a sock. You push down into the ground, and then you put additional load on top, and the water comes up through the sock. So it's a route for the water to get away, and it's called a wick drain.
So why is there so much dust?
Dust is an issue for us, yes. Well, as soon as you dry out an area and you take the topsoil off, the wind's going to blow through, and we've got 23 k's worth of area that's potential to have dust. So it's an issue for us and a major concern.
And with the big winds that we have here in Papamoa, how are you managing the dust?
How are we managing? They have water carts and they keep the area moist, which keeps the dust down. They have a polymer-based spray, which is a little bit like a PVA glue, and you spray it on and you create a crust layer which holds the surface down. So that's probably one of the most effective things. And also, though, you close out areas as quickly as you can. So you do your work, you get in, you close it out, and you move on.
And that seems to be working so far?
It does. There is still issues around it, and they're pretty vigilant in trying to get on top of it. But it is a major concern for us, and the regional council's keeping an eye on us.
And will you be slowing down a lot of the roadworks over the busy summer holiday to stop that congestion along Te Maunga to Papamoa?
Congestion, what we'll do is we'll program our works for night works and think about when's the busy time of the day to actually do the works. So we'll avoid as much delay as we possibly can. But no, during the summer months, we want to keep things going as quickly as possible because it's good to construct.
And how long until Te Maunga and the to Papamoa Road is actually finished?
Okay, that's it's going to be the next. It's a staged process. So we're going to build, currently building the eastbound lane, and then once that's constructed, they'll move the traffic across to it, and then they'll build the westbound lane. So the first one will probably take another year, and then it'll be 1 to 2 years again to do the rest. So it won't be fully operational until the actual road's fully open.
So we're looking at an 80k speed limit for another couple of years?
Yeah, it'll be there for quite a while.
And can the road potentially sink?
Yes. I said earlier on that they've got to get 95% of settlement, which is primary and secondary settlement, but there's still 5%. So it'll sink over time, but hopefully a very little bit, not much, because it's designed to be a high quality road.
And because with lots of heavy vehicles with the freight industry, does that make it harder to try and?
It's designed as a motorway of high quality, so it's the standards are there to be able to.
Now you guys have actually found a lot of interesting historical pieces. Tell us about that.
Yes, we found an adze, which is probably about 600 years old, and it is probably unfortunately lost by its owner. And we've also found some obsidian shards, which indicate that there was a workshop there for making tools. There's been 40 sites throughout the whole of the TEL. We've been doing some excavations, so a lot of it is Hangi stones and midden, but we've had a couple of interesting things.
And whereabouts are some of those sites that you guys have had almost archaeological digs?
Yeah, between alongside the existing State Highway 2 is where some of that stuff's come out, just at the bottom of the Papamoa Hills.
If you would like to view the proposed route, visit nzta.gov.nz/projects. That is the news for today. We really want you to be involved, so like us on Facebook and let us know your views. If you have news including your own video and photos, go to our website and hit upload. Thanks for joining us. I will be back tomorrow night with more guests from in and around the regions. I'm Hilary Entwistle. Have a lovely evening.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.